Vatos, thanks again for tuning into yet another video. We are going to be removing or applying, sorry, the body filler. So we have the body filler right here. We already went ahead and removed the dent. You're not supposed to Bondo over paint. This was the previous person that sold me the tank. They made that mistake, so we went ahead, pulled it out, and then of course we used the stud welder. You guys can see it down there to pull out the dent. We used 2 studs. Came out pretty nice. You guys can see it. There's still a little bit of an imperfection right here, and that's where the Bondo comes into play. So this is the process of doing it. I sanded this down with a 60 grit. All of this around here is 80 grit. So you're supposed to clean the surface before you apply Bondo. Obviously, you got to make sure you're on metal. The little the grit gives the Bondo bite to hold on, of course, to the surface, to adhere to the surface. You got to make sure you do this. That way your repair can last years and years to come, okay? If you Bondo over the paint, obviously that might last maybe a year, 2 years, depending on how bad that dent is. You're not supposed to do it, okay? Period. So let's go ahead, enough rambling, let's go ahead and apply the Bondo here. So this is just regular Bondo. There's different types of repairs and stuff like that. There's angel hair, that's for fiberglass. This one's just easier to kind of work with, easier to sand down. It sands down a lot quicker. So yeah, you just pull this out, you grab your little scooper like this, and then you could mix this. I don't think it's that bad, but we don't need that much, okay? Just grab a little bit of it. This does not harden until you add the hardener. So it's always better to have an actual like plate when you're doing this sort of stuff. It's just when it comes to mixing it, it's just a little bit easier, okay? So let's go ahead and put that. I don't think we need more than that, okay? So you might have to apply 2 coats of primer depending on, of course, the dent. I believe with just 1 this is going to be enough. All right, so let's go ahead and put that primer over to the side. Let's grab our hardener. Depending on the temperature, it's actually a cool day right now. You can see that there's a little bit of forecast, so you probably want to add a little bit more hardener. Like I said, it really depends on the weather. If it's hot, if it's humid, you don't need as much. If it's a cool day like today, then you probably need a little bit more hardener. And this is the way I was told to mix it when I was working at a body shop, of course, 20 years ago. You work it in, and then of course you always use the edge to kind of get it all in there. And what you want is, you want it just a uniform color of Bondo, okay? You don't want these streaks. You want it all just one solid color. This might be a little bit too much hardener, but we'll see how this turns out. And of course, if you're trying to get that edge, use the edge of your plate and then just work it in there. So like I said, it's a lot easier if you have a nice solid surface like a proper plate. So yeah, this might be a little bit too much hardener, so I gotta hurry up and apply this. So it looks like it's pretty good right there. We are ready to just apply the Bondo. I'm not sure if the camera's gonna pick it up. It looks like we have a little bit of a high spot. You guys saw it when I dragged it over, so it's okay if you put a little bit over, because like I said, I made myself a good surface area so I could sand it down. So, and it's always a good idea just to put a little bit higher, because we are going to sand this down. We're going to sand it down anyways. So just take off a little bit of the excess on the edge, because you have to feather that out anyways. So we're just removing a little bit, just so we're not, you know, sanding down too much. That looks like that's pretty good. We're just taking off a little bit off of the edge, so we don't have to sand all of that down. But that looks pretty good. And most of this, I guess, we're just gonna have to throw away. It's not that bad. I mean, Bondo's not that expensive. So that's how you apply Bondo. And then we're going to wait for this to dry. It could be anywhere, depending on how much hardener you put on there, it could be anywhere between 10 minutes to 20 minutes. And then, like I said, we're gonna shape this with our hand. Okay, I do have the sanding block right here. The reason why I use this is this takes shape of whatever I'm sanding. You guys can see that's gonna hold the shape. If you use a sanding block, you're gonna get a flat spot right there. It's not gonna look right. It's gonna look horrible. I mean, yeah, I guess you could probably get it to blend in, but what's gonna happen, of course, is the light, it's gonna bounce off of it at a different direction because there's a flat spot. So you gotta have something that that contours, and you have a little bit of foam like this. This is for a wet sponge. They also sell those foams, the foam blocks. You could use that also. So we're gonna use this, of course, with the 80 grit, and then we're gonna block this down, give it shape, and we're pretty much, you know, ready to go on that. So that's how you apply the Bondo. I guess if you're looking for a video on how to do it, that's how you mix it. Like I said, oh, the reason why I use this tape, it just makes it easier for cleanup. You know, I don't have to scrape. I mean, these are really inexpensive. You could buy a whole set on Amazon or on Harbor Freight, but you can see how quickly it cleans up with just, you know, applying the masking tape. So of course you also want to make sure that this is a clean surface. All right, if you have old Bondo in here on this edge, whatever you have on here, it's going to transfer over to the surface. You can see that the surface looks pretty clean. Now if we had, of course, some dirt in here or anything, that would dig into the Bondo, and it's not going to look right. You're going to dig into it, and then it's going to pull the Bondo out. So that's why you always got to make sure your sponge or your spreader is completely clean. So that's why I use the masking tape, just to keep it nice and clean. And the cleanup is instant. You guys can see I don't have to apply anything on here, and that's pretty much it. So stay tuned. We're gonna let this dry, and then we'll come back and sand it down.
A few moments later.
All right, so now we're just sanding down the Bondo. You guys can see I'm feathering it out around the edges. Like I said, you got to use the surrounding area as your guide. So that's why, like I said, the reason why we're using a foam sander is because it gives us that shape to the tank. So the goal is just to remove the Bondo, have a feathered air surface, kind of like what you see here. You see how it feathers into the primer, which is the black, then it feathers into the base, which is the red, and then it feathers into the clear, which is white. So you want a nice transition from Bondo to metal to primer to base, and then clear, of course. So that's what we're doing with this 80 grit. The reason why I'm using 80 grit is because I am eventually going to be primer after this. So I'm going to use a filler primer just to fill in all the little scratches that you probably don't see. Of course, we have to clean up the tank. And then there's little minor imperfections right here in the Bondo. The primer's going to fill that in too. So we're just, you know, knocking it down, straightening it. It's going to be pretty good. You could always use your hand as well, just feel it. When it's dull like this, it's really tough to see the imperfections, the high spots and the low spots. You know, once you get used to it, I could kind of feel it right about right here. This is still like a low spot right here, and everything else is kind of taking shape. So I'll probably remove a little bit more Bondo, and then we'll even out the low spot and the high spot with, of course, just blocking this down a little bit more. So that's how you apply the Bondo, and of course that's how you sand it down. Like I mentioned, you can use the 80 grit, which is what I have here. You can use 80 grit, you can use 120. Once you start getting into the 180 to 300, you're probably not going to use filler primer. You might use self etching primer, but like I said, I am still going to use filler primer here. So that's why I'm using the 80 grit, because I'm going to block it down again with the 320 after I do the primer, the filler primer. So thanks for tuning in case you're out there wondering how to prep a tank. Of course, that's how you do it. You can also see the full tank itself. It's already prepped up for primer, filler primer. And then what you see here, these little tough to reach spots, I'm gonna use the scuff pad for this. Okay, I'm gonna just set it down, because the person who prepped this before, that made this stupid repair on top of the paint, they painted it without, I believe they probably didn't prep it with the 320. I believe they prepped it with the 600 or something happened, because the paint was chipping off, and I think that's why whoever sold the tank, they put it on eBay, because they didn't want to do all this work again. And I understand it. Sometimes it's just cheaper. If you're paying somebody to do it, of course it's going to be cheaper potentially just to buy a brand new tank, because this type of work, welding, studs, and then probably recoating the inside of the tank and then painting it, if you don't know what you're doing, you're pretty much probably better off just buying a new tank. So like I said, I got this for a steal. I just gotta work on it. All right, thanks for watching. Life's risky out there. Later.